Buddha's story is one of profound transformation. A prince born into wealth and luxury, he grew up shielded from life's harsh realities. Yet, despite having everything, he couldn't escape the deep sense of dissatisfaction he felt. He discovered that all life is marked by suffering, sickness, aging, and death, and set out on a quest to find a way to overcome it. What followed was a journey of self-discovery, deep meditation, and a profound revelation that would change the world forever. Today, let's explore the real story behind Buddha's enlightenment and the path he discovered to overcome suffering. Why this story matters today. We live in a world that often celebrates the pursuit of happiness, wealth, and success, yet so many still feel unfulfilled or lost. Buddha's life is a reminder that no matter how much we gain, we cannot escape the inherent suffering of life. Born in royal comfort, he had everything most could ever wish for, yet he was deeply unsettled by the suffering he saw in the world. Over 2,500 years ago, Buddha embarked on a spiritual journey to answer life's biggest question: why is there suffering and how can we end it? His teachings, focused on mindfulness, compassion, and the deep understanding of our minds, are as relevant now as they were back then. Buddha's search for meaning offers a timeless guide for overcoming suffering in our own lives, showing us that peace, joy, and enlightenment are within reach, not through external possessions, but through inner transformation. A prince's life in luxury. Siddhartha Gautama, who would later become the Buddha, was born into royalty in the 6th century BCE in what is now Nepal. His father, King Suddhodana, wanted to shield his son from the harshness of life, so he kept him within the palace walls, surrounded by wealth, beauty, and luxury. Siddhartha had everything a prince could desire: fine clothes, delicious food, and the companionship of beautiful women. Yet, despite this extravagant lifestyle, he felt a deep sense of emptiness and dissatisfaction that no material possession could fill. As a young man, Siddhartha's curiosity led him to venture outside the palace. What he saw shocked him: an old man bent with age, a sick man suffering from illness, and a dead body being carried away. He realized that no amount of wealth or pleasure could protect him from these universal experiences of suffering. It was then that Siddhartha made a momentous decision. He would leave the comforts of his palace to find a way to overcome suffering. The 4 sights and the decision to leave. Buddha's pivotal moment came when he saw what are known in Buddhist tradition as the 4 sights. The first was an old man, frail and bent with age. The second was a sick man, suffering from disease. The third was a corpse, being carried to its final resting place. And the fourth was a wandering ascetic, radiating peace and serenity despite having nothing. These sights deeply disturbed Siddhartha. For the first time, he fully understood the truth. All human beings are subject to suffering, illness, aging, and death. This realization shattered his perception of the world he had always known. Despite the luxuries surrounding him, Siddhartha couldn't escape the fact that all things are impermanent and subject to suffering. He was struck by a deep sense of urgency to find a solution. After much contemplation, he made a bold decision. He would leave his life of luxury and embark on a spiritual journey to seek a way to end suffering. The quest for truth. Siddhartha's quest for truth led him down many paths. First, he sought guidance from renowned spiritual teachers of his time. He practiced intense meditation, underwent extreme forms of self-mortification, and deprived himself of food and comfort. His aim was to push his body to the limits in an attempt to transcend suffering. Yet no matter how severe the ascetic practices became, they did not bring him closer to the peace he was searching for. In fact, they left him physically weak and mentally foggy. Realizing that extreme asceticism wasn't the answer, Siddhartha sat beneath a Bodhi tree and vowed not to rise until he found the truth. He decided to take a different approach, one rooted in balance. Buddha's insight into the middle way emerged from this moment, where he understood that neither indulgence nor severe deprivation would bring true peace. Instead, The path to enlightenment lay in living with moderation, mindfulness, and wisdom. Meditation and enlightenment. Siddhartha's moment of transformation came during a deep state of meditation beneath the Bodhi tree. For days he meditated, facing his fears, desires, and attachments. As his mind calmed, he was able to observe his thoughts without becoming overwhelmed by them. He understood the nature of suffering and how the mind perpetuates it. In that moment of clarity, Siddhartha realized that the root of suffering is attachment. Attachment to desires, identities, and the impermanent nature of life. Buddha's enlightenment was the realization that suffering arises when we cling to what is fleeting and out of our control. Once Siddhartha understood this, he experienced a profound shift. His mind was no longer clouded by desire, fear, or ignorance. He had reached enlightenment and, with it, the key to ending suffering. From that moment on, Siddhartha was known as the Buddha, the Awakened One, the Four Noble Truths. Buddha's enlightenment revealed the core teachings that would form the foundation of his philosophy, the Four Noble Truths. The first truth is that suffering is an inherent part of life. It's not something we can avoid, it is woven into the fabric of existence. The second truth reveals the cause of suffering, our attachments and desires. We cling to people, experiences, and things, expecting them to provide lasting happiness. But when these things inevitably change, we suffer. The third truth is that suffering can be overcome by letting go of attachment. Buddha taught that by relinquishing the need for constant control and embracing the impermanence of life, we can find peace. The fourth truth is the Eightfold Path, a practical guide to living with wisdom, ethical conduct, and mental discipline. This path leads to the cessation of suffering and the realization of enlightenment. Buddha's teachings offer a roadmap for transforming the mind and freeing oneself from the cycle of suffering. The Eightfold Path to end suffering. The Eightfold Path is the practical guide Buddha offered to help us end suffering. It consists of 8 interconnected practices that lead to a more mindful, ethical, and peaceful life. The first practice is right understanding, seeing the world as it truly is without distortion. The second is right intent, acting with kindness, compassion, and goodwill. Right speech involves speaking truthfully and kindly, avoiding harmful or divisive words. Right action is about living in harmony with others, refraining from harmful actions. The next 4 practices involve mental cultivation, right livelihood, earning a living in a way that doesn't cause harm. Right effort, cultivating positive mental states while abandoning harmful ones. Right mindfulness, being fully aware of the present moment. And right concentration, developing deep concentration and insight through meditation. These 8 practices work together to cultivate wisdom, ethical behavior, and mental discipline, leading to a life free from suffering and filled with inner peace. The nature of suffering and impermanence. Buddha's teachings emphasize the impermanence of all things. Everything is constantly changing. Nothing in this world is permanent, and the pursuit of stability in an unstable world leads to suffering. Buddha observed that our desire for permanence, for things to remain fixed, leads us to cling to relationships, objects, and experiences, which are all inevitably subject to change. This attachment to impermanent things causes us pain when they are taken away, and even when they remain, we live in fear of their eventual loss. Buddha's wisdom teaches us that true peace comes from accepting impermanence, not as something to be feared, but as a fundamental reality of existence. By embracing change and accepting the transient nature of life, we free ourselves from the anxiety and suffering that arise from trying to hold on to things that were never meant to stay forever. Buddha's legacy of peace and compassion. After achieving enlightenment, Buddha dedicated the rest of his life to teaching others how to overcome suffering. He didn't retreat into solitude, but actively engaged with the world, sharing his wisdom with anyone willing to listen. Buddha's teachings emphasize compassion as a core part of his path. He didn't just teach people how to find inner peace. He taught them how to alleviate the suffering of others. True enlightenment, Buddha believed, isn't about personal achievement. It's about recognizing the interconnectedness of all beings. By acting with kindness, compassion, and understanding, we help reduce suffering not only in ourselves, but in the world around us. Buddha's life was a living example of this truth, and his teachings have inspired millions to walk the path of peace, wisdom, and compassion. His legacy endures today, reminding us that the way to overcome suffering is not to run from it, but to face it with courage and compassion. Buddha's journey from a prince in a palace to the enlightened teacher of millions is a powerful reminder that true peace and liberation come from within. His path to overcoming suffering wasn't about seeking external solutions, but about understanding the nature of the mind and the impermanence of life. Today, Buddha's teachings continue to guide those seeking freedom from suffering, offering practical wisdom and timeless peace. Reflect on the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path. How can you apply them in your life? If this story resonated with you, share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe for more insights. May Buddha's wisdom illuminate your path toward inner peace.